AEW is teasing another debut for next week's Dynamite, and obviously a lot of people always have the same concern, which is, does AEW have too many debuts? And I think a lot of people get it wrong when they talk about this, right? I don't think there's an issue with AEW debuting superstars, signing new superstars. I always believe the issue with AEW is signing people and not having a plan for those people. And it's a really tricky situation because if you look at AEW and the way that they have their show on a weekly basis, they have 2 hours of Dynamite, 1 hour of Rampage. You're trying to get this huge roster on television, and at the same time, you have the challenge of trying to protect them from losing. It becomes very difficult. This is why AEW features non-contracted people on their show, right? If you bring in somebody who's not contracted and they lose the match, it's okay, because at that same time, AEW can continue advancing whoever it is that they're trying to push. The problem is when you don't have a lot of TV time, it causes you to have this issue where people aren't being used. So I don't think there's actually an issue with AEW signing new people. I don't think there's an actual issue with AEW debuting too many people. I think the biggest issue is how they go about creating plans for the people that they bring in, especially in the long term. Now that Tony Khan owns Ring of Honor, we're starting to see some people are being used more specifically for Ring of Honor, but at the same time, they're still being used for AEW Dark, which I think that's a huge question mark in its own. But if AEW gets to the point where they're actually separating the roster, and Tony Khan specifically has a set roster for Ring of Honor and AEW, I think that is going to be so much more advantageous for Tony Khan moving forward, because then it releases some of the pressure of having to use certain people or trying to get them on TV, whether it's for 2 hours of Dynamite or 1 hour of Rampage. So I think there's a huge difference between the two. I think some of the flack that AEW gets in regards to people saying, oh, he signs too many people, that's not the issue. The issue is not signing too many people. The issue is signing somebody, then not using them, and then moving them to AEW Dark. You do all of this hype to get people excited about your episode, then you announce their debut, then you announce they're all elite, and then they don't do anything special. The best example of this was recently Juice Robinson. We've known Juice Robinson to be in AEW for a while, and we've seen him on AEW Dark, and it was hyped up that he was going to be in the company. Then nothing was done with him. Now it turns out that there's going to be some sort of storyline with Bullet Club or Juice Robinson, however they choose to go about it, we don't know. But now Juice Robinson is finally on Dynamite. And I think Juice Robinson's a hell of a talent, but I think for AEW, a lot of people looked at it like, well, why did you bring in Juice Robinson if you're not doing anything with him? And then it looked bad because he was on AEW Dark. See, the issue is not that Tony Khan signed Juice Robinson. It was he signed Juice Robinson. Clearly, it looks like he had a plan for Juice Robinson, but he signed him, announced it, made a big deal out of it, and then it took such a long period of time until he actually decided to use Juice Robinson. I think if Tony Khan is smart, which I do think Tony Khan is smart, but I think if he's like really, really smart, the big thing that he has to do, and I do think we're going to eventually get to the point where he does it, is I think he is going to do some sort of brand split. When Tony Khan could get more television time for Rampage, I do think a brand split for both shows will be in the works. I really do believe Tony Khan will do something like that because he has a huge roster, and I think Tony Khan knows that the wins and the losses, they matter, but at the same time too, and it just goes to show you, he has some really serious depth with his roster, right? But some people are just going to have to lose, and that's okay. You're going to have jobbers. And I know Tony Khan is not trying to have everybody lose, but at some point you got to have people lose. I think he knows at some point, once he gets more TV time added, he can do a brand split. And then the cool thing is, within your own brand split, if you want to use people, like we see Eddie Kingston working Ring of Honor right now, if you want to continue to do that, you absolutely can. You know, I'm not saying you can't let them work each show. We've seen WWE have people go from the main roster to NXT and then come back to the main roster. We saw that with Natalya. We saw that with Dolph Ziggler. That's okay, right? But you have to make it relatively clear. This person is an AEW wrestler, and that person is specifically a Ring of Honor wrestler. If a Ring of Honor wrestler shows up on AEW Dynamite, let the world know that that person is a Ring of Honor person, right? I think the more that you differentiate the rosters, the better it is. I don't think Tony Khan has a problem signing people. I don't have an issue with Tony Khan signing more people. If Tony Khan wants to sign more people, that's fine. I've always said it's fine to sign people, but you got to have a plan for them. And it's hard to do that when you don't have a lot of television time. So Tony Khan is signing free agents, doesn't have a lot of TV time, can't make it all work, can't put everything down. He can't just put things down and start doing things for the new signing. Like, he has to have a plan. It's not a clear-cut plan. And I just think Tony Khan, I think deep down inside, he knows this is a challenge. He's kind of spoken about it before. But for those who criticize AEW for signing too many people, I don't agree with that personally. I don't think that's a reasonable complaint. I think how he handles those signings, what he does with them after, that's the issue. WWE has the same problem, actually. If you look at WWE, they brought back a lot of people who were released from the company. And yes, we saw with Bronson Reed and Gargano and Dexter Lumis, they got something in the works. Tegan Knox returned. Now it looks like they kind of got something in the works. But it didn't happen within the first 2 weeks. And I think that's kind of an issue, is like signing people, taking them away from free agency, but then you bring them into the company and you're not necessarily doing something. Mind you, I think there's a huge difference between this as well. Doing something with somebody and making somebody a champion right away are two different things. Chelsea Green's a perfect example. Chelsea Green's on television every single week. She's involved with Adam Pearce. Now she's involved with Carmella. There is something there that they're building with. Every single week she's on TV. That was a great example of WWE bringing somebody in and having a plan. But keep in mind, WWE never announced the signing of Chelsea Green months before she joined the company. See, that's the thing. Tony Khan announces somebody's joining the company, and then for a while you don't see them, and then they show up. Or you see them once, then they go away for a while, and then come back. So, again, it's not really an issue. I just think the issue or the topic of AEW signing too many people, it's actually a dead topic. I don't think that's the concern. Again, I'm going to reiterate this. I think it's just how important. It's super important that you bring somebody in, have a plan for them, and that's it. We're seeing people cross over between AEW and Ring of Honor. I think it would be better if you split up the rosters, especially because there's so much depth between the two companies. But that's really the only complaint. I think Tony Khan is doing a good job of bringing in quality people. We're seeing that. And I think also, too, like Sky Blue is another good example. Sky Blue is somebody who's, we've seen her on AEW Dark, we've seen her on Dynamite, we see her on Rampage, not necessarily involved in big storylines or anything like that, but she's on television. I think there could be a lot of potential with her in the future, right? So now the crowd gets a little familiar with her, whether she wins or loses. AEW brought her in. Now, as people get more familiar, there's more potential long-term, right? So again, it's not like you have to hype up all of these signings. You could bring them in. You could use them on Dark. Not everything needs to be overhyped, and not everything needs to be done right away. But if you're going to overhype something and then not deliver something right away, it looks really bad. That's been the issue, and that is my conclusion to this video. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I want to know what you guys think.